Freezing darkness before dawn on March 14, 2003, an 18-year-old girl walks alone across the frozen tarmac at Bagram Airfield. She is not a pilot, she has no orders. But in less than 2 hours, General will order an airstrike that will kill her father, the man the entire world believes died 15 months ago. She breaks into a locked filing room and finds the truth hidden inside a classified envelope. Her father is alive, held prisoner in a secret facility across the border, and a strike package has already been authorized for 0600 hours, designed to erase both the man and the evidence he spent 15 months gathering from inside his cage. With time running out, she wakes a skeptical captain, calls in a ranger who owes her father his life, and forces a base commander to look the other way. At 0431, she rolls her father's A-10 down the runway with no lights, no clearance, and no backup. She flies low through the Hindu Kush, evades 2 F-16s sent to shoot her down, and makes an impossible gun run to stop the last piece of evidence from being destroyed. This is not just a rescue mission. It is one girl declaring war on the system that tried to bury her father, and betting everything she has to bring him home. The cold doesn't ask permission. It comes through the flight jacket, through the thermal layer underneath, through the wool and the cotton and the skin, and into the actual architecture of a person. And Nora Vivane stands on the frozen asphalt anyway, boots planted, breath-fogging white in the dark, staring at a machine that costs $18 million and looks like a committee of angry engineers built it after a very bad week. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, ugly, slow, built like a flying bathtub that learned to hold a grudge. She loves it more than anything still breathing. Her hand finds the fuselage before she tells it to. Just lands there. Flat palm against cold metal. The way you touch something you were afraid you'd never see again. The way you touch the last thing a person you lost ever held, tail number 706. She doesn't look at the number. She doesn't need to. She knows this aircraft the way she knows her own pulse, which is to say, intimately, desperately. In the dark with her eyes closed, feel alone, what she does not know yet. What she will know in exactly 14 minutes, in a room she has no clearance for, reading a file she is not allowed to touch, is that her father is alive, 40 kilometers past a border that doesn't appear on the unclassified maps, in a concrete building with one lit window, breathing. And in less than 7 hours, a man with a general's star on his collar is going to make very sure he stops. She doesn't know any of that yet. What she knows is the cold, the smell, the particular weight of 4:30 in the morning on a base where 18,000 people are asleep and a handful are awake, and almost none of them are awake for a good reason. She breathes in diesel, hydraulic fluid, the mineral cold of a mountain that has never once in its geological life been warm. She breathes out, okay, think no, don't think. Thinking is for people with time, and time is the one thing she is about to run completely out of. She is 18 years old. That's what they see when they look at her. Not a person, a number. An administrative error wearing Air Force utilities 2 sizes too generous for a frame, standing in places she has no business standing. 5'3", 122 pounds. Brown hair pulled back so tight it pulls at the corners of her eyes. Eyes that are gray in some light and a colder thing in others. She arrived at Bagram 11 days ago as an airman basic, the lowest rank the United States Air Force offers a human being. Crew chief trainee. Here, officially, to hand tools to people who actually know things and otherwise stay out of the way. She is also, though nobody on this base knows it, the only person standing on this entire flight line who could find every hydraulic fault on every Warthog parked here without opening a single manual, who could calculate fuel burn for a low-altitude close air support run in mountain terrain in her head in the dark while half asleep. Who has in fact done exactly that. 3 days ago, on a paper napkin in the chow hall, while eating eggs that had given up on being eggs, she learned all of it from a man who isn't here, or who everyone keeps telling her isn't here. Her hand stays on the metal a moment longer. There's a seam under her palm, a panel line she has run her fingers along since she was 14 years old. She knows what's behind it. She knows the torque spec on every fastener. She knows the way the metal contracts in cold like this, and the half-millimeter of give it develops that makes a junior mechanic think something's wrong when nothing's wrong at all. She knows this plane the way some people know scripture. Then she pulls her hand back, and the cold rushes into the place where her palm was, and she turns and walks toward the operations building, because somewhere in that building there is a filing room. And somewhere in that filing room there is a name she has been chasing for 15 months. She has run all the way out of reasons to wait. The sky over the Hindu Kush is black with a thin bruise of blue at the eastern edge. Somewhere behind those ridgelines, the sun is making its plans for the day. So is she. Behind her, the 706 sits alone on the line, nose into the wind, the way her father parked every aircraft he ever flew. Nose into the weather, ready to go. He taught her that too. The briefing room fills at 5:45 and the air in it changes when she walks in, not loudly. Nothing about Nora Vane is loud, but heads turn. A pilot leans toward another pilot and says something behind his hand. Somebody almost laughs and decides not to. There's a flavor to a room when the people in it have collectively decided you don't belong. It's not hostility, exactly. Hostility would be a kind of respect. This is something flatter. This is the dismissal you give a thing that wandered in by mistake. She takes the second row. Not the front, that's for pilots. Not the back, that looks like hiding. Second row, far right. Notebook open, pen ready. Spine straight, the way her father taught her to sit when she was small and the world was loud and a chair was a place you could choose to be unbreakable. The youngest person in the room by a decade. At the front stands Captain Mace Drury, 35, 6'1", 3 decorations and a jaw that looks like it was assembled on purpose by someone who'd seen a lot of jaws and wanted to improve on the concept. He has the particular stillness of a man who is very certain he belongs exactly where he is standing. He is also, Nora has decided over 11 days of watching him work, genuinely excellent at his job. She has listened to him brief a strike package. She has watched him land an aircraft battle damage in a crosswind that grounded 2 other pilots. He is good. He is the real thing. She does not like that. It makes disliking him complicated. Weather window between 08 and 1100, Drury says. Korengal's been quiet the last 72. Could move overnight. If it does, the Rangers up at the ridgeline lose their resupply window and they start the day already behind. He stops. He's looking at her, not at the room. At her specifically. The kind of look that invites the rest of the room to look too. Which it does. 22 faces, turning. Is there a reason, Drury says. Slow. Even. The voice of a man who has decided to make a point and is going to enjoy the precision of it. That a crew chief trainee is sitting in an operational brief. Every head swivels. She feels it land. Physical weight of collective attention. Judgment with an audience. The thing that makes most people, at 18, shrink down into the smallest possible version of themselves. She does not blink. I was told to be here, sir. By who? My duty assignment sheet. Beat, your duty assignment sheet, Drury repeats, slowly. Like the words might mean something different if he handles them carefully enough. Yes, sir, which is true. It is in fact perfectly surgically true, because she filled out the duty assignment sheet herself at 4:15 this morning, when an administrative clerk left a stack of blank forms and a logged-in terminal unattended for the 4 minutes it took him to refill his coffee and use the latrine, which is not a thing she is going to volunteer to a room full of officers. Drury looks at the colonel, Colonel Owen Dast, 51, gray at the temples, the kind of tired that is set into a man's posture like weather into old wood, looks at his coffee. Carry on. Dast says. Drury carries on. But his eyes come back to her once more, and they say the thing men's eyes say when they have decided something about you. We are not done. Nora writes down the mission parameters. Her hand is completely steady. Pulse is doing something more complicated. Somewhere she keeps it where nobody can see, because here is the thing about being underestimated. It is a cage, and it is camouflage, and the entire trick, the trick her father drilled into her before she was old enough to understand why she would ever need it, is to never once confuse the two. Let them believe the cage is all there is. Let them file you under harmless. Let them stop watching, then walk out of the cage the exact moment they look away. Her mother used to say she got the stillness from Roy. That was the word she used. Stillness. Roy Vane did not waste words, did not perform feeling for an audience, did not explain himself unless there was a tactical reason to. He communicated through the quality of his attention, and when Roy Vane actually looked at you, really looked, the whole weight of him behind it, you felt it land somewhere under your sternum and stay there. He looked at his daughter like that from the day she was born, like she was the mission. Her mother is 6 years gone now. A thing that happened fast and quietly the way the worst things do, between one autumn and the next, and after that it was just the two of them, Nora and Roy, a man and a girl in a hangar full of aircraft, and a silence that they both understood was a kind of language. The brief ends. The room stands and gathers and disperses into the cold 22 people who have already forgotten she's in the room. Nora sits 1 extra second still and lets the noise go past her like weather going past a window. Then she stands up and she goes to work because the work is the thing. The work has always been the thing. Whatever else gets taken from a person, The work is the one possession nobody can confiscate, and her father gave her enough of it to last a lifetime. Master Sergeant Harlan Pruitt does not waste time on introductions, 57 years old. Built like someone took a larger man and compressed him into a medium frame and then forgot to mention it to the man. He runs the maintenance bay for the 74th Fighter Squadron. The way a person runs something they have personally decided, chaos is not permitted to touch. The tools hang in their shadows on the board. The floor is clean enough to perform surgery on. Nothing in Harlan Pruitt's bay is ever where it isn't supposed to be, because Harlan Pruitt has decided that disorder is a small daily insult, and he is not going to absorb it. When Nora reports at 7:30, he looks at her for exactly 3 seconds. "You know the 706, he says. "Yes, Sergeant." "System. Describe the fault cycle," she describes it. Completely, the inertial navigation system, the way it drifts in the cold, the primary fault, and then the thing most mechanics miss. The secondary cascade that only shows itself when the temperature drops below 22 degrees Fahrenheit and the airframe has sat still for more than 4 hours. Because that's when a particular connector contracts just enough to introduce resistance that reads, on the diagnostic, like something else entirely. Something that sends people chasing the wrong problem for an hour, which the 706 has done. Sat still in the cold, because Bagram in March is cold enough to make machines do interesting and inconvenient things. Pruitt says nothing for a moment. His face doesn't change. But something behind it recalculates. "Start with the electrical bus," he says. She starts with the electrical bus. She does not look at a wiring diagram. There isn't one in reach, and she doesn't need it. And that absence is the first thing Pruitt notices, because every other trainee he has ever supervised reaches for the diagram the way a drowning man reaches for a rope. The inside of the 706's electrical system is a map she has been reading since she was 15 years old. Roy walked her through it twice in a hangar in Nevada with the desert heat coming off the tarmac in visible waves. Then he made her walk him through it. Then, and this is the part she remembers most, the part that felt cruel at the time and feels like love now. He turned out the lights and made her do the whole thing blind. "Because your hands need to know," he told her. "In the dark, what your eyes might not get the chance to see." She hadn't understood it then. She understands it now. With her fingers tracing a cable run she cannot see in the cold guts of an aircraft in a country her father disappeared into, that he was not teaching her a maintenance procedure. He was teaching her how to survive losing him. Pruitt watches her work. He doesn't speak for 11 minutes. He just watches her hands. And there is a particular thing that happens in the face of an old craftsman watching a young one who is the real article. Not a flicker of recognition, exactly. Something quieter, something closer to grief. Because he is looking at hands he has seen before, then, "Your father's hands moved that." She stops, doesn't look up. If she looks up, something will get loose that she cannot afford to let loose. "Not here, not now, not in front of anyone. You knew him," she says. To the wiring, 3 deployments. Desert Storm through 97. A pause. "Best I ever saw in a cockpit. And I have seen a lot of men in a lot of cockpits." She starts working again. Her throat does something complicated that she ignores by force, "Sergeant. Do you know what happened to him?" Pruitt is quiet long enough that the silence becomes its own kind of answer. A heavy one. "Keep working," he says. She does. Because that is the language they speak, the two of them, already 11 days in, work in place of comfort, motion in place of the things that are too big and too sharp to say while standing still. She tightens a connector, reseats a module. The bay smells of ozone and machine oil and the raw cold coming in through the open door. Somewhere out on the line an APU spins up with a rising whine, and the day starts becoming a day. Around noon a klaxon cuts the air, a ranger element pinned in a valley to the east. Close air support requested, urgent, and the weather has iced in. Visibility under 200 meters, the ceiling sitting right down on the deck. 2 pilots decline the run on safety grounds, which is not cowardice. It is arithmetic. You cannot provide close air support to men you cannot see without becoming yourself the thing that kills them. Every pilot in that squadron knows it. The 2 who declined are not weak men. They are men who can do the math. Drury takes it anyway. And on the line, 90 seconds from rolling, his dies. "Voss," Pruitt shouts across the bay, then catches the wrong name half a syllable in and corrects without breaking stride. "Vane." Nav's hard down on Drury's bird. "Can you bring it back?" She is up the access ladder in under a minute. Her hands run to the cable path she has memorized through 1,000 repetitions. Find the cold-soaked module. Reset it clean. Not the obvious reset, the one that would only mask the cascade and let it come back at altitude, but the deep one, the one that actually clears it. The system wakes. Numbers bloom green across the display in the cold. Drury looks at her through the canopy. The first look he has ever given her that is not entirely contempt. Something in it that is closer to a question. Then he's gone, rolling into a wall of white, into weather that should not be flyable, toward men who are out of time and out of options and counting, right now, on a sound coming out of the sky. Nora stands on the line and watches the aircraft vanish into the storm until there is nothing left of it but the fading note of its engines. Her hands are shaking from the cold, mostly from the cold. Drury comes back 2 hours and 10 minutes later with 2 holes punched through his left wing and the white scoured face of a man who flew through something that very nearly kept him. The holes are clean. Small arms, probably, or shrapnel from something that detonated closer than he'd have liked. The aircraft brought him home anyway. That's the thing about the Warthog that the people who design prettier aircraft never quite understand. It is built, from the first rivet, around a single stubborn idea, that the pilot comes home. Titanium bathtub around the cockpit, redundant everything, flight controls that work on cables and prayer when the hydraulics are gone. It is an ugly airplane built by people who decided that bringing you back mattered more than looking good doing it. Drury sets it down, rolls out, and after the crew swarms the aircraft and then scatters, after the post-flight adrenaline burns off into the flat gray exhaustion that always follows a bad run, he finds her in the bay. He stands there a moment, looking at her. She can see him deciding whether to say the thing he came to say. "You heard the radio last night," he says finally. "When I called the Kringle run, the night brief, not a question. You knew I was 3 degrees off on the approach angle before I corrected it." She doesn't deny it. There's no point. He already knows. She can see that he knows in the set of his shoulders. "You corrected it yourself," she says. 4 seconds later, "That's not what I asked. You didn't ask anything." A muscle works in his jaw. "Why didn't you say something?" "On the net. Because I don't have a call sign, and you didn't need me. You'd have caught it in 4 seconds whether I said anything or not. Stepping on the net just to be right would have put noise on a frequency you needed clean." She meets his eyes and holds them. "That's not help. That's ego wearing a helmet. That lands somewhere." She watches it land. "You're a crew chief trainee," he says. But there's less certainty in it now. He's saying it to see if it's still true. "Yes, sir. Crew chief trainees don't know what a 3-degree approach error sounds like over a comms net in a snowstorm. They don't know it exists. They don't have the vocabulary." He takes a step closer. "So I'm going to ask you one time, and I want a real answer. What are you?" And there it is, the question under all the other questions. The one she has been waiting 11 days, 3 years, really, for someone, anyone, to actually ask out loud. She could answer it now. The truth is sitting right there in her mouth, and Drury, for the first time, looks like a man who would actually hear it instead of dismissing it. But the timing isn't hers yet. There's a clock she doesn't know about, a file in a dark room, a name. The timing belongs to that, and she can feel it the way you feel a storm coming before the sky shows you anything. "I'm whoever the duty sheet says I am, sir," she says. Drury almost smiles. It doesn't make it all the way to his mouth, but it gets close, closer than anything he's offered her in 11 days. "Right," he says. He turns and walks out, slower than he walked in, and Nora stands in the bay with the truth still folded up small inside her, and she thinks, soon. Not yet, but soon, because she can feel it now, the shape of something coming, the way the air changes pressure before weather arrives. 11 days she has been on this base, learning its corners, its blind spots, the 4-foot gap between the 2 perimeter cameras on the east fence, the exact rhythm of the watch rotations, which clerks leave their terminals logged in and when. 11 days of being the error in the system that nobody bothered to correct because correcting it would mean noticing it, and nobody notices an 18-year-old girl with a wrench. She hadn't known, when she requested this posting, exactly what she was waiting for. She is about to find out. 12:15 in the morning. The base is as close to quiet as Bagram ever gets, which is not quiet at all. But the daytime register has dropped away, the generators. The wind coming down off the mountains with nothing to slow it. Far percussion of something that might be weather, and might be the war, and might be both. Nora is not in her bunk. She's at a locked door on the east side of the operations building, doing a thing her father taught her when she was 14 years old, and asked him, with a 14-year-old's outrage, why he was teaching her how to break into places. "I'm not teaching you to break in," he said. "I'm teaching you that locked doesn't mean closed. It means somebody wants you to believe it's closed. Those are different facts. Always know which one you're looking at." The lock gives. The door opens. The filing room is small, Metal shelves to the ceiling, banker's boxes stacked too deep, the stale, particular smell of paper that nobody has had a reason to touch in a long time. Dust and old ink and the faint chemical ghost of toner. She knows what she's looking for. Ghost 4. She found the designation the way you find a loose thread on a sleeve, by pulling something that didn't quite match the rest of the fabric. A duty register with a redaction that wasn't fully complete, one letter of a name surviving in the corner of a black bar. Supply manifest with a reference number that fit no aircraft anywhere on the base logs. Her father taught her, patiently over years, that loose threads are never accidents. Somebody always drops them. Somebody is always careless, somewhere, because people are people. The only real question is whether the carelessness was small enough to overlook or large enough to follow all the way to the end. She moves through the shelves fast and silent, reading labels by the thin blue light of a penlight held in her teeth. Third row. Second shelf. A box labeled with a date range that makes her stomach drop before she's even read the contents. November 2001 through February 2002, the months her father vanished. Inside, beneath 3 folders of routine logistics, a manila envelope. Sealed, stamped in red, Classed, eyes only, and below that, in smaller, cooler type, a designation she will be saying in her sleep for the rest of her natural life. Operation Lantern. She opens it. Her hands are steady. She makes them be steady. 4 pages. 2 are blacked out wall to wall, no recovery possible. Somebody was careful with those. 1 is partly legible, and 1 is a list: pilot designations, call signs, mission references, the bones of an operation. Most of the entries are routine. She stops. 4. Stop it. Redacted. Off. W. Tillis Bijen. Date 16 of 2001. Not missing, not killed in action, not deceased. Contained. She reads it again, a third time. The word refuses, no matter how many times she runs at it, to mean anything other than exactly what it means. It is not a word you use for a man who died. It is not a word you use for a man you lost. It is a word you use for a fire, for a leak, for a contagion, for something dangerous that someone, at a desk, decided needed to be kept still. Her father did not crash. Her father was not lost the way that word is supposed to mean, searched for, hoped over, mourned across the slow ache of never knowing. He was held, on purpose. By a name she memorizes the way she has trained herself to memorize everything. The coordinates on the 3rd page, half visible beneath a redaction that didn't fully take, the kind of carelessness her father taught her to hunt for. The date, the authorization code. General Warren Tillis footsteps in the corridor. She moves. Envelope back into the box exactly as it was. Box back onto the shelf, square to the edge, the way Pruitt would want it. She is 3 feet from the door, the wrong side of the room. No reason on earth for a human being to be standing there at this hour. When the footsteps stop, silence. 10 seconds that last a year. She does not breathe. She is trained for this too. On a tarmac in Nevada, a man's voice in her ear saying stillness is a weapon. Stillest thing in the room is the thing nobody finds. The footsteps move away. She stands in the dark with her heart trying to build a wall fast enough to keep something enormous out. And she breathes, finally, once, twice. She lets the truth arrive in her body the way it has been waiting to. Her father is alive, was alive. November 2001. 15 months ago, as of the last time anybody at a desk bothered to update a field on a form. Contained. She gets out of the room, and she does not go to her bunk, because there is no version of the next several hours that contains sleep. She goes to the maintenance bay, because the 706 is there, and right now she needs to stand next to the one thing on this entire base that she trusts without reservation. Pruitt finds her at 1:30, sitting on the maintenance platform beside the aircraft, her back against the cold fuselage, not sleeping, not crying, just sitting with the size of the thing. He doesn't ask what she's doing there. He crosses the bay, sits down on an equipment crate, plants his forearms on his knees, and studies the floor, like there's an answer written on it. I know you went in the file room, he says. She doesn't deny it. She is done denying things tonight. The denying took energy she no longer has to spare. I found Ghost 4, she says. He's quiet. Harlan. First time she's used his name. It comes out without her permission, the way the truest things do. He's alive. We don't know that. The file says contained. It says, I know what the file says. His voice is not unkind. It is something worse than unkind. It is tired in the deep structural way of a man who has been carrying a heavy thing so long that his arms have stopped reporting the weight. I've read it. 3 times. 3 years. Every time another request came back, stamped denied with nobody's name under the stamp. He looks at her, and there is something in his face she hasn't seen before. A grief he's been keeping in the same place she keeps hers. DAS has filed 4 formal requests for a search and recovery operation for your father. 4. All of them refused. No explanation. Appeal. Just no. From somewhere above where a man like Dast can reach, she stares at him, who refused them. He reaches into the chest pocket of his uniform over his heart and comes out with a small key. Old, worn smooth at the edges from years of being carried. The kind of object a man keeps against his body for so long that it stops being an object and becomes a promise he made. He holds it out across the space between them. There's a locker, he says, southwest corner. Bay 4. Bottom row, a pause. Roy gave me that. The last time I saw him said, if anything happens to me, and if my daughter ever comes through this base, and Harlan, she will, you hold this until she's ready, and you give it to her when she is, she takes it. It's warm from his pocket. From being carried against a man's heart for 15 months, what's in the locker, his last flight log, she stands. Southwest corner, he says again, to her back, and Nora, she stops. Whatever's in there, he left it for you. Not for anybody else. He could have given it to me to read. He could have given it to the Air Force. He gave it to you. That means he knew. A beat. He always knew you'd come. The locker is exactly where he said it would be. The little key turns on the first try, smooth, like the lock has been waiting for it. A flight log, standard issue, Air Force green, worn pale at the corners from a thumb that opened it 10,000 times. Her father's handwriting on the cover in black marker. Vane, RT, 74th FS, SEQ 7. She opens to the last page. His handwriting, small, precise. The handwriting of a man who does not waste space, who fills a line and then the next, edge to edge, nothing decorative, everything load-bearing. If you're reading this, they lied to you. About all of it. About why I disappeared. About what happened on the 14th. I'm not writing the details here. I don't know who finds this first. What I can tell you, I found something I wasn't supposed to find. I documented it. I was going to report it through proper channels, the way you're supposed to, the way I taught you. I didn't get the chance. I don't know how much time I have or where I'll end up. But I know you. I know you better than I've ever known anyone. And I know you'll come looking. When you do, ask Tillis. He knows the coordinates. He's the one who signed the hold. The plane is 706. She knows you. She can't read the last line. Not because the words aren't there. They're there. She can see them. Because she already knows exactly what they are, and reading them will undo something she cannot afford to have undone yet. She is still holding the log against her chest when Lieutenant Delia Vorth finds her at 2:18. Vorth is 27, an intelligence officer, specific kind of person who apologizes for waking you up, while simultaneously making it unmistakably clear that you need to be awake right now, and there is no version of events where you go back to sleep. Tablet in one hand. Face of someone who ran across a base in the cold to find one specific person. I need you not to panic, Vorth says. I'm not panicking. Good. Great. Because I ran a trace on Lantern after you mentioned it at dinner. I said the word once. In passing, I know. I'm catastrophically bad at minding my own business and occasionally, crucially, right about things, and tonight is one of the right ones. She turns the tablet around. Ghost 4 is your father, Roy Vane. Last sortie logged November 14th, 01, and his status in the system isn't being held. An unofficial facility, 38 kilometers northeast of the Pakistani border. 15 months, she points, and nobody is coming. For him, the bay. The 706 overhead dark and patient, the hum of the generators, then Nora sees it. Embedded in the operational scheduling data, 2 columns to the right of the location marker, in a font a size too small to be read comfortably. Under a field label, you'd have to know to look for Streak Package Assignment. Precision Lantern Clochore. Off W. Tills Trekted Confirmation. Seat 7 Alpha. Execution Window. 614 Mar. She 221. 3 hours and 39 minutes, Delia, she says. Very, very quiet. He's going to bomb his own prisoner, allegedly. Vorth says, and every word is being placed down with care, like she's walking across ice and choosing where each foot goes. Yes, and in doing so he destroys 15 months of whatever your father has been building inside that facility. Both problems. One crater, very efficient, Nora stands. She looks at the 7-6. Her father's plane, his last sortie, his handwriting in a log that says she knows you. Her pulse is very loud now. Her mind is very, very quiet, which means it has already made a decision her mouth hasn't caught up to. I need Pruitt, she says, and I need Drury. Drury doesn't know me yet. There's a difference. A big one. She's already moving toward the door. Vorth watches her go, then says it quietly, to the empty bay and the dark aircraft, and nobody at all. Oh, this is going to be something. Mace Drury opens his door in 12 seconds, which tells her something. He was either already awake, or he sleeps at a level of readiness that doesn't allow for the deep kind. He takes one look at her standing in the corridor at 2:49 in the morning, still in her utilities, the flight log gone now, hidden, her face arranged into something flat and certain. "No," he says, "you haven't heard it yet, don't need to. Whatever it is. Whatever's got an 18-year-old at my door at dark 30 with that look. No, my father is alive." A pause. A real one. She watches the word reach him. "Ghost 4, she says, before the pause can close. "Roy Vane, your predecessor in the 706. The pilot whose name is still painted under the canopy rail if you scrape the touch-up. Held past the Pakistani border for 15 months under an unauthorized hold signed by Brigadier General Warren Tillis, because he found and documented an illegal weapons pipeline running through this theater." She watches his face. "Tillis has a strike scheduled on the facility at 0600. 3 hours. The same crater that kills my father buries every piece of evidence he spent 15 months assembling." Says nothing. His face does nothing, which she's learning is what his face does when the rest of him is thinking very, very fast. "You can't know that," he says. "Vorth pulled the strike package out of the operational scheduling system 25 minutes ago. It's there. Site 7 Alpha, authorized by Tillis. Execution window 0600, a beat." She lets the next part land slow. "He is going to kill an American officer to close a file, and the only people who know are standing in this hallway and one bay over." The corridor light hums in the silence. "How many hours?" he says finally. She doesn't pretend not to understand the question. It's the only question that matters, and they both know it. 340.2, she says. "Unlogged. Most of it A10A. The silence changes its entire quality. He steps back from the door, pulls it open the rest of the way. "Come in. Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. Because if I'm going to throw my career into a hole in the ground tonight, I want to see the whole shape of it first." The beginning takes 11 minutes. Drury listens the way the best pilots listen, completely still, processing everything, interrupting exactly twice, and both interruptions are the right questions. Not "how do you know this?" Not "why should I believe you?" He's past those. He's already somewhere else. Who else knows? Fourth. Pruitt, Dast, knows his recovery requests were blocked, doesn't know about the strike package yet. Forth's about to tell him. He nods slowly, looks at the wall, or through it into some calculation only he can see. "Can you actually fly her?" 4 words, the question she has been waiting 3 years for a single human being to ask her, like they mean it. "Put me in the cockpit," she says, "and find out." Bay 3. 3:11 in the morning. Not a simulator, a live aircraft on ground power, one of the operational birds in maintenance rotation, systems hot. Drury stands outside the canopy with a stopwatch in his hand and a face that has gone professionally blank. "Engine flame out," he says. 800 feet AGL. "Mountain terrain, no good options below you. Crosswind 35 knots, left to right, gusting. You have 40 seconds before you're part of the mountain." She settles into the seat, this cockpit. This exact geometry of switches and gauges, specific angle of the HUD frame against the dark. She's been here before. A different airframe, a different base, a desert instead of a mountain, but her father's voice in her ear walking her through every system until the systems lived in her hands instead of her head. "Don't think about what it looks like," he used to say. A panicked pilot reads the panel. A good pilot feels the airplane. Think about what she needs. She runs the emergency restart sequence. No hesitation. Not once. Her hands move through the procedure the way water moves through a channel it cut 1,000 years ago. Without deciding to, without consulting anything outside themselves, because the path has been worn so smooth that thought is no longer required and would only slow her down. Retard successful. Altitude recovery initiated. Crosswind compensated 31 seconds. She takes her hands off the controls and sets them in her lap. Drury looks at the stopwatch for a long time. Longer than it takes to read it, then he puts it in his pocket. "Pruitt's prepping the 706, he says. "I know. Vorth's pulling the facility coordinates, I know. We're going to need Oaks. Ranger element, 3rd Bay East. Staff Sergeant. He owes your father a debt he's never been able to pay back, and tonight's the only night he'll ever get the chance. He's already moving for the door. I'll wake him." She stays in the cockpit 4 more seconds, hands resting on the controls of an aircraft that isn't even the right one. Her father's plane waiting 2 bays over. The hum of generators. The cold pouring in. A whole base full of sleeping people who have no idea what is about to lift off into the dark above their heads. She exhales. 3 hours and 7 minutes. Let's go find him. Staff Sergeant Cutter Oaks is 33 years old and built like the United States Army identified a problem and solved it by manufacturing a person. 220 pounds of deliberate, economical calm. Scar that runs from below his left ear down to the line of his jaw, pale against the dark of him, that he has never once explained to anyone who's had the nerve to ask. He does not sleep, Nora will learn, like a man who expects the night to leave him undisturbed. He's awake before Drury finishes the first knock. The door opens. Oakes looks at Drury. Then his eyes track past Drury, to the small figure standing behind him in the cold corridor light, and something in his face shifts. Roy Vane's kid, he says. It's not a question. You know who she is. Drury says. Seen the photo Roy kept tucked in his kneeboard pocket. Carried it every sortie. Same eyes. He steps back from the door, opening the room. Come in. Talk fast. I can hear in your faces this isn't a social call, so she talks fast. Oakes listens with his arms crossed over his chest and his weight balanced low, and the expression of a man running calculations that have nothing to do with arithmetic. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't react in any of the places where a person is supposed to react. Not at Alive, not at 15 months, not at his own prisoner. He just absorbs it. All of it, the way the ground absorbs rain. When she finishes, he's quiet for 4 seconds, then he speaks, and his voice has dropped lower into a register that comes from further down. November 14th, 2001, Tora Bora District. Your father flew 2 back-to-back close air support runs in weather that grounded every other aircraft on the board that day. The whole board. Everybody else stayed home. He's looking at the wall, not at her. The way men look at walls when they're actually looking at something 15 months and 4,000 miles away. 4 men in my element walked out of that valley alive because of those 2 runs. I was one of the 4, a breath. I filed a commendation for him when we got back. Wrote it myself. It disappeared somewhere up the chain, never landed anywhere. He looks at her now, finally full on. I always figured Roy knew something about why a commendation for the man who saved 4 Rangers would just evaporate. Now I guess I know. He did know, Nora says. And he documented all of it. Somebody needs to get him out of that building before 0600 so that everything he documented actually means something. Instead of just being ash. Oakes nods. Once. That's the whole answer. That's all of it. I need 2 men I trust in a vehicle that doesn't ask questions, he says, turning to Drury, already pulling a duffel from under his rack. Give me 20 minutes. You have 15. Then stop talking and let me work. He moves through his gear with the unhurried precision of a man who has done exactly this. Woken in the dark, assembled himself, walked toward something terrible, more times than he would ever tell you. And halfway through, seating a magazine with a flat metallic click, not looking up, he says the thing that Nora will carry out of that room and keep for the rest of her life. Your father held a door open in a valley once. For 4 men who'd never have made it out otherwise, it cost him everything he had. Click. The magazine seats home. Way I figure it. It's about time somebody held one open for him. Colonel Owen Dast's office light is on at 3:49 in the morning, which means he hasn't slept. Or he woke for a reason he hasn't shared with anyone. Nora pushes the door open without knocking. There is no longer time in the night for the courtesy of knocking, and finds him at his desk. A cup of coffee gone cold beside his hand. A file folder open in front of him. Face of a man who has been sitting alone with something terrible for so long that the terrible has stopped feeling urgent and started to feel like a piece of furniture he's learned to walk around in the dark. He looks up. At her. Drury filling the doorway behind her. He closes the folder, slow, like closing it costs him something. Sit down, sir. I need to tell you. I know about the strike package. She stops. Vorth called me 11 minutes ago. His voice is tired, not surprised. The deep, structural exhaustion of a man who has been holding something heavy so long that his arms stopped reporting back. I have known your father was alive for 14 months, Airman. Filed 4 formal requests for authorization to investigate his status and effect his recovery. The channels I'm supposed to use, the protocols a man in my position is supposed to follow. I followed every one of them. He picks up the cold coffee, looks at it, sets it back down without drinking. All 4 denied, at a level I cannot reach by a process that has no appeal, no explanation. Just a stamp that says no 4 times over 14 months, while a man who flew for this country rots in a building nobody will put on a map. The office is very quiet. I'm sorry, he says. To her. Only to her, not to the room. She doesn't know what to do with that. So she takes it and puts it somewhere she can't see it. Same place she puts everything tonight that she can't afford to look at directly, sir, she says. The 7-0s and 6s prepped. Oakes is moving to the border in a vehicle that isn't logged. Falcon, Drury, is flying cover. I'm planning to. Stop, she stops. Das stands. He crosses to the window. It looks out over the tarmac, dark, except for the perimeter lights and the faint amber glow leaking from Bay 4, where the 706 sits running, breathing, waiting. He stands there with his back to the room, his hands clasped behind him, a posture she recognizes because it's the same one her father used when he was carrying a decision too heavy to carry facing anyone. "I cannot authorize this," he says to the glass. "I cannot issue an order for it. I cannot officially be aware that it is happening." Pause. "What I can tell you is that the flight log for the 706 has not been updated since 2100 hours last night, and that the next scheduled maintenance review of Bay 4 is not until 0800 this morning. 4 hours from now." Another pause. "Great many things can happen in 4 hours that a base commander asleep in his quarters would have no way of knowing about." He does not turn around, dismissed, he says. To the window, to the dark, to the aircraft glowing in Bay 4. Drury looks at Nora. Nora looks at Drury. Neither of them says anything because there's nothing left to say that wouldn't cheapen it. They leave. And as the door swings shut behind her, Nora glances back once. Owen Dast is still at the window, hands behind his back, the loneliest shape she has ever seen. A man who gave his entire life to a system, followed every rule it ever handed him, and is now choosing, finally in the only way left to him, simply not to see. It is the bravest thing she will watch anyone do all night, and he will never get a medal for it. There is no medal for the things a man does by deciding not to look, and that, she understands walking back out into the cold, is exactly why it counts the most. The evidence is the thing. Vorth lays it all out at 4:02 in the morning, on a table that is too small for everything she's trying to fit on it, with the focused, slightly manic energy of a person who has been awake for 22 consecutive hours and is being kept upright by something that is almost certainly not regulation caffeine. Okay. So walk with me. She arranges documents like a card sharp dealing a hand. Father found a pipeline, United States-sourced material, being quietly rerouted through unofficial channels and not blankets and rations, Nora. Surface-to-air components, the specific dangerous kind. The kind that end up in places they are never supposed to end up and make the sky over this entire region more lethal for every single aircrew that has to fly through it. Who was running it? That is the exact question that got him contained. She pulls up a document on her tablet and turns it so Nora can see. The authorization trail goes up 3 levels, and then it stops at one signature, W. Skomagistiks. Oversight. He was skimming the pipeline, Vorth says, taking his cut, keeping it flowing, using the chaos of an active theater as cover, the way a smart, corrupt man always does. And when your father started building an actual case against him, Tillis shut him down, held him somewhere he couldn't finish it and couldn't be found and couldn't be helped. Off every map, off every list anyone with a conscience could ever check, except Roy Vane is not a man who stops building a thing just because somebody takes his tools away. She knows this in her bones. She watched him her whole childhood, refused to leave a problem unsolved. Is the documentation still recoverable? Nora asks. If the facility is physically intact, he's had 15 months in there with anything resembling a working processor and a power source. Then yes. God, yes, Vorth pulls the tablet back. And here's the part that should make the hair stand up on your arms. He requested a CIA liaison through a back-channel contact. 8 months ago, and somebody answered. There has been an encrypted relay code active out of that location since October. She meets Nora's eyes and holds them. Your father has not been a prisoner waiting to die, Nora. He's been an asset working a case the whole time. Quietly, patiently. From inside a box, of course he has, because Roy Vane does not wait to be rescued. He builds the rescue himself from the inside with whatever scraps he's given, and then he waits with the bottomless patience that used to drive her insane as a teenager. For someone to come close enough to pull the door open from the outside, she thinks of the flight log. I know you'll come looking. Yes, he would count on that. He would build the entire thing around it. Something cold and clarifying moves through her, head to feet, not anger, not grief. Something far more useful than either of those. The specific clarity of finally understanding the shape of a thing you've been staring at in the dark for 15 months, Drury, she says. I need the approach maps. Low altitude. Terrain following. Every meter of radar shadow we can find between here and that valley. He's already pulling them, spreading them across the table. The contour lines of the Hindu Kush like the fingerprint of something enormous. And for exactly 1 second, Nora lets herself feel the entire size of what is in front of her, a general. An international border, 3 hours and change on the clock, an aircraft that hasn't turned a wheel in 11 days, 2 F-16s she doesn't know about yet. and a father she hasn't laid eyes on in 15 months, who treats his own captivity like a project with a deadline and a deliverable. Then she folds it all up small and puts it where she keeps things, and leans over the map. "Show me the valleys," she says. 4:18 in the morning, the 706 is already breathing. That's the only honest word for it. Pruitt has the ground power cart running, the system cycling green one after another, twin engines turning in low warm-up idle, and it's a sound Nora has been hearing since she was 14 years old, and it still does something to the base of her spine that she has never been able to name. Not fear, not joy, something that lives in the country between them, with no civilian word attached. Pruitt walks her through the final checks himself, not because she needs walking through. They both know she doesn't. He could read the checklist, or she could, and it would come out identical. He does it because this is the thing he has to give. This is his version of everything he can't say standing up. Maverick safety, confirmed GAU arming circuit, hot ECM pod active, jamming radius programmed for the border coverage. He stops at the wing, lays his flat, scarred hand on the leading edge, not checking anything. There's nothing to check there. Just resting his hand on the metal, the way she rested hers 4 hours ago in the dark. Father did his final walk-around in total silence, he says. His voice has gone quiet, the kind of quiet that has actual weight to it, that presses down on the air in the bay. Just him and the airplane. 5 minutes every single time, no matter what was waiting for him in the sky. The crew learned to leave him to it, and he told me once, only once, we weren't men who talked much, that the airplane could tell the difference between a pilot who was present and one who was already somewhere else. She looks at the 706, 11 days she has been on this base, with her hands inside this aircraft's systems, crawling through its guts, knowing it the way a person knows a language they learned before they had the words to explain how they learned it. Standing here now, in the amber light, with her father alive 40 kilometers away and a clock running down, she finally understands. Maybe none of it was accident, the assignment to this base, the placement in this unit, this specific airframe, with his name still ghosting under the canopy rail. He arranged this, the same patient way he arranged the flight log, and the locker, and the warm little key in Pruitt's chest pocket, and the CIA relay humming since October. Father is the most patient person she has ever known, and the most maddening. And she is going to bring him home, or she is not going to come back at all. And somewhere underneath the fear, she has made peace with both of those outcomes, because he taught her how to do that too. "Pruitt," she says, "after I take off. You didn't see me leave. Bay 4 was empty at 04:30, he says without missing a beat. I was over in Bay 7 running a routine fluid check. Wouldn't have seen a thing." Steps back. Looks at her flight suit, a little too big in the shoulders, at the helmet under her arm, at the 706 behind her, breathing in the dark. 47 combat sorties, he says. 12 of them in weather that should have killed any pilot alive. She brought him home every single time. 47 for 47. A pause. His jaw works. She'll bring you home too. It's the only thing she knows how to do. She puts on her helmet. 428. Pruitt kills the bay lights. 706 rolls out onto the dark tarmac on external power. Slow, no running lights, threading through the exact 4-foot gap between the two perimeter cameras on the east fence that Nora cataloged on her 3rd day on this base, without quite knowing why she was bothering. She knows why now. Because her father taught her at 13 years old, eating terrible rubber pancakes in a base commissary in the desert, that the single most important thing about any environment a person finds themselves in is knowing how to move through it without being seen. Why, she'd asked, 13 and unimpressed. Because the mission you'll someday need to fly the most, he said, is almost always going to be the exact one nobody's ever going to give you permission for. She'd rolled her eyes at him. She is not rolling her eyes now. She rolls to the runway threshold, runs the takeoff checklist in her head, every item, no list in her hands. And in the last few seconds before she commits, she thinks she can't help it. Of Dast at his window, hands behind his back, choosing not to see. Of Pruitt in Bay 7, running a check on nothing. Of Vorth at a terminal tracking a frequency that officially does not exist, in a war that officially has rules, all these people. Choosing one by one to look away, each of them making a decision shaped exactly like silence. He advances the throttle. The 706 doesn't roar. People who've never been in the seat always think jet engines roar. From inside, it's nothing like that. It's a presence, a pressure that builds in your chest and your back teeth, a weight that lifts off the world as the machine decides all at once to stop belonging to the ground. She lifts off at 4:31 in the morning. No lights, No traffic on any standard frequency. Nothing recorded on any log that anyone will think to check for the next several hours. The tarmac drops away beneath her, and the Hindu Kush opens up ahead, black and vast and ancient, threaded with the thin silver lines of snow lying along the ridgelines in the starlight, and she banks east and she drops low, down below the radar envelope, into the dark country between her and her father. Terrain following at night is a conversation. The aircraft talks constantly. Through the stick, through the rudder pedals, through the instruments glowing soft in front of her, through the small honest variations in lift as rises and falls beneath her belly. She answers, adjusts, corrects. It's the kind of flying that is more feel than thought, more reflex than decision, the kind you cannot learn from a book or a simulator or 100 lectures, the kind that has to be poured into your hands over years by someone who has it in their own. She is completely calm, which surprises her distantly the way you notice weather. She had expected fear, or at least something in fear's family, some self-doubt she'd have to wrestle down into a corner. Instead, there is just this cockpit, the instruments, the endless quiet conversation with the machine, a finite knowable set of variables in a night that has, for once, gone simple. Her father was right. The plane can tell the difference. And tonight, for the first time in 15 months, she is entirely present, entirely here. There is nowhere else she is. At 4:49, Oaks comes up on the frequency that doesn't appear in any standard rotation. 10 minutes out, he says, his voice flat and low under the road noise. Eyes on the facility. Single structure. Exterior lighting on the south face. 2 guards at the main approach standing not alert. Additional personnel unknown. A pause. There's a vehicle on the north side I do not like the look of. What kind? Technical. Crew-served weapon mounted on the bed. Pointed at the approach road, she runs the math without thinking about running it. Approach corridors, wind, altitude, available cover, line of sight. If you need suppression on that gun, not yet. We go quiet first. Quiet is always better when you can have it even. Operational, the calm of a man who has learned exactly how much noise costs. Stay high until I call for you. You'll know, copy. Holding high, she climbs. Not too high. She has to stay under the radar coverage that reaches across the border from the Pakistani side. An invisible ceiling she can't see and can't touch and absolutely cannot cross, but high enough to have options, high enough to see. From up here, facility is a small cluster of lights in the floor of a dark valley. Isolated, insignificant. No reason on earth to exist, except that it doesn't need one. That's the entire point of a place like this. It exists precisely because nobody official is ever supposed to look at it, and so nobody official ever does, and a man can disappear into it for 15 months, and the system will simply close over the space where he was, or 4:51. 1 hour and 9 minutes until the strike. She watches the lights, and she thinks, finally letting herself about her father inside them. 15 months. Building something careful and patient and quietly explosive in the very best sense of the word, day after day after day, waiting with that bottomless patience for the door to open from the outside. I know you'll come looking. Here she is, Dad. Here she is. The facility breaks the way these things break when Cutter Oaks is the man breaking them, which is to say, with a terrible economy, 5 full minutes of absolute silence on the net, and then a specific compressed kind of noise that she can hear partly through the open frequency in her ear and partly through the airframe at her feet, a low vibration traveling up through the fuselage from the valley floor below. Then in her ear, wherein she begins her descent. 10 seconds later, main building secured, 2 rooms cleared, moving to the east structure, a pause, longer than a tactical pause should be. Long enough that something in her chest begins to tighten. Oaks, nothing, Oaks, we found him. A breath, Nora. We found him, she breathes. The whole cockpit seems to tilt, and then right itself. Is he? He's not what I expected. Something in his voice she cannot read, cannot place this. You're going to need to hear this part from him. From his own mouth. But he's okay. He's upright. He's okay. Get down here. She doesn't know yet what "not what I expected" means. She is about to find out. The landing is improvised, a flat stretch of frost-hardened scrub a quarter-mile northeast of the facility. Not a runway by any definition or regulation would recognize, but long enough and flat enough to put the 706 down without destroying either the aircraft or herself, both of which are outcomes she would strongly prefer to avoid tonight. The landing is rough. She feels it in her spine, in her teeth. The aircraft bounces once hard, and she catches it and brings it down and rolls out across the scrub with the gear hammering over the uneven ground. She doesn't care. It's down. It's intact. She's intact, on the ground at 5:07, engine to idle. Systems holding green. She sits 1 second longer than she strictly needs to, looking east where the ridgeline has just begun to show the very first blue-gray suggestion that somewhere behind 3 more ranges of mountains, the sun is getting ready. Then she pops the canopy and climbs down into the cold and walks toward the facility with her helmet under her arm, because she still does not know what else to do with her hands, and the helmet at least gives them a job. The building is low and windowless except for one room on the east side, where light leaks out through a narrow gap in the wall covering. 2 of Oakes's men hold the perimeter, low and still in the dark. One of them tracks her approach, recognizes her, gives a single short nod. She nods back and goes through the door. The room inside is concrete, a folding table, a laptop with an external battery pack and 2 hard drives cabled to it, their little lights blinking steady, a single metal chair, a bare bulb on a cord overhead, throwing everything into the amber of an improvised workspace. The kind of light men work by when the work matters more than the comfort. And at the table, her father, Roy Vane, is 50 years old and he looks exactly like himself. That is the thing that very nearly takes her legs out from under her. Not that he looks older, or broken, or starved, or diminished by 15 months in a box. He looks like Roy Vane, the same economical posture, the same particular, total stillness that used to make a room reorganize itself around him. The same face she has been carrying in her chest for 15 months. Not as a ghost, not as a casualty, not as a thing to grieve, but as a problem she simply had not finished solving yet. He looks up, and he looks at her the way he has looked at her since the day she was born, the whole weight of his attention arriving all at once, like a hand on your sternum. Then his eyes track past her, to the open door, to the empty dark space where nothing else followed her in, and she watches something behind his face do a fast, hard calculation. "You came alone," he says. "I came with Oakes and his element. Drury's flying cover above the valley. Forth's running signals back at Bagram." She pauses. "I'm not as alone as I look." He nods, slow filing it. "The 7-6 North Ridge. She's fine. Hard landing, but she's fine." Something crosses his face then, fast, gone before she can catch it and name it. She saw it land and she saw it leave, and it was not nothing. He stands up from the table. And for one suspended moment they are just 2 people in a concrete room at the edge of a war, and she lets herself think, that he is going to say something that matches the actual weight of 15 months, and the flight log, and the warm key, and every Sunday morning in Nevada when he handed her the controls of his life's love and didn't look nervous, not even once, not even when she was 13 and the desert was trying to kill them both with heat. Instead he says, "You're wearing your helmet indoors." She looks down at it, tucked under her arm. "I didn't know where to put it," she says. "Table." She puts it on the table. He turns back to the laptop. "I need 90 more minutes," he says. The final verification sequence on the evidence chain takes 90 minutes to compile and authenticate. If I transmit it incomplete, it's still recoverable, but it's significantly harder to prosecute, and a man like Tillis has lawyers who eat significantly harder for breakfast. He says it like a briefing, like a weather report. Like his daughter has not just flown a warthog across an international border in the dark, alone to stand in this room. There's also a complication. 3 secondary cache locations, backup documentation, distributed in case this site was ever compromised. All 3 are on Tillis's strike list. She goes very, very still. This facility isn't the only target. No. He looks at her over the glow of the screen. He's been thorough. I'll give the man that much. He's a careful animal. A pause. The coordinates for all 3 are in the secondary folder on drive 2. If those caches burn before the chain is complete, the primary evidence develops gaps, and a good defense attorney drives an entire convoy through a gap. She stares at him. Her father, alive, sitting at a folding table in a concrete room 38 kilometers inside a country the United States is not technically operating in, running evidence compilation sequences, treating the arrival of his only child across an uncharted mountain range as a logistical update on an ongoing project. "Roy," she says. He looks up. "Are you okay? It isn't a question." Not quite. It's a statement, laid down between them on the table next to the helmet, asking only to be confirmed or denied. He looks at her for a long moment, and the Roy Vane expression, the one that processes absolutely everything before it permits any of it to reach the surface, moves through several things she can almost, but not quite, name. "Things that don't have public words, I will be," he says. When this is finished, she reaches for the secondary folder on drive 2. "Tell me the coordinates." There are 3 of them. The first is a building on the edge of a small settlement 12 kilometers to the west. A medical supply cache used as a quiet drop point, hidden in plain sight under aid markings. The second is a roadside antenna installation that has been converted, without anyone official ever knowing, into an encrypted microwave relay. The third is a vehicle, a specific white truck, parked at a specific compound, 3 months of compiled documentation sealed in a container under the rear seat. All three on the strike list, all three scheduled for 0600. She checks her watch. 5:19:41 minutes, 3 locations, dispersed across a span of terrain she cannot possibly protect from the air alone, not all three, not in 41 minutes, not against her earpiece. Drury. Clipped. Immediate. The voice of a man whose easy confidence has just gone somewhere cold. Nora. FAF got 2 contacts on radar, fast movers inbound from the south. F-16 configuration a beat. They are not ours. She is already running for the door for the aircraft for the cold. 2 F-16s do not appear over an unofficial facility in the middle of the night by accident, which means Tillis knows, which means the moment Oakes' element crossed the wire, something fired, a sensor, a tripwire, a watcher on a hill with a radio, and Tillis, wherever he is sitting, with a coffee and a clean conscience he doesn't deserve, has just moved from passive to active. He's not waiting for 0600 anymore. He's coming now. EDA to your position, 22 minutes, Drury says in her ear. They're flying combat spread. Weapons hot. They are coming to do a job. She's at the 726 helmet on, strapping in, engine spooling up from idle to life. Her mind is doing 4 things at once. Vectors, altitude, terrain, the 3 caches, and underneath all 4 of them runs a single clear, cold fact, steady as a heartbeat. An A-10 cannot outfight an F-16, not in a straight engagement. Not at altitude. Not in any fair contest that the laws of aerodynamics would recognize. Good thing she has absolutely no intention of giving them a fair contest. Drury, she says into the radio, I need 20 minutes for Oakes to clear everyone out. Can you give me 20 minutes? Pause. I can give you 18, he says. If you're creative, I'm extremely creative. Then get airborne, Vane. I'll set the box and keep them honest. She's off the scrub and into the air at 5:23. Because here is the thing that everyone who has never flown a Warthog low through real mountains fundamentally does not understand. Slow is not the same word as vulnerable. People hear slow and they think easy kill. They are wrong, and the mountains are about to explain why the F-16 is a thoroughbred. Fast, beautiful, lethal at altitude, built from the ground up for speed and energy, and the kind of vertical fight that happens in big open sky where going fast is the whole advantage. The Hindu Kush at 60 feet is not big open sky. Here, going fast is how you die. The ridgelines come up without warning. The valleys are narrow and they turn. The wind shears between the ridge faces are violent and nonlinear, and they will throw a fast aircraft into a rock wall before the pilot's hands can answer. And the radar return off this jagged, snow-cluttered, broken terrain is so chaotic that locking onto a slow aircraft flying below the ridge crest forces the targeting system to work 3 times as hard for half the certainty. The Warthog was built for exactly this fight. By people who knew exactly what they were doing. She's not fast, her father told her once, in the desert, both of them squinting into the sun. Stop wishing she was. She doesn't need to be fast. She needs to be where they aren't looking, and nobody ever looks down. She drops to the valley floor, 60 feet above the scrub. The ridge walls rise close enough on either side that she can pick out individual boulders in the silver moonlight. She banks hard and follows the valley north, hugging its floor, then cuts east through a gap she knows is there. Not because she can see it, but because she memorized this exact terrain off a contour map 2 hours ago, and the map is still bright behind her eyes. The 2 F-16s are up above the ridgeline, fast, searching, hunting. And they cannot see her yet. Bandits are splitting, Drury reports. One pushing east, one holding south high. Classic, they're going to try to box you. Copy. I see the geometry. She is calm, completely, almost unnervingly calm. Like the cockpit is the single place in the entire world where everything external falls away and the problem becomes simple. Not easy, not safe, simple. A finite number of variables. Physics she has understood since she was a child. And a machine that is talking to her without pause, that she knows how to hear. The Eastern bandit tries to drop down on her, to get above and behind. She cuts back hard to the west, tighter than an F-16 can possibly match at his speed in terrain this tight, and the airframe buffets and shudders through the turn. The 706 talking back to her, telling her exactly how much she has left. And she answers with the precise control inputs her father pressed into her hands 7 years and a lifetime ago in the Nevada desert. And then in one held second between maneuvers, with the valley walls sliding past and the snow blowing off the ridge crest above her, it comes, his voice. Not the man at the folding table, the man from 4. From Nevada, summer dust and blinding white sun, and a 16-year-old who was certain she already knew most of the important things, finding out, slowly, that she was wrong about that. The memory comes up through all the silence between them, like it was never gone at all, clear as the day he said it, ugly plain. But she always wants you home, she says it into the mic. Barely a breath. Not for any frequency, not for any ear. Just for the cockpit and the machine and the mountain dark beyond the canopy. I know, Dad. Then she banks and the valley takes her, and the work pulls her back down into itself. 12 minutes, Oaks in her ear. Last personnel are clear of the structure. We are out. Repeat, all friendly personnel are out of the facility. 13 minutes. She holds the valley. She holds it with everything she has. The Eastern F-16 tries twice more to put a lock on her. Twice it fails, because she is below the crest, threading terrain that turns his $10 million targeting radar into a very expensive instrument that cannot make up its mind about what it's looking at. 17 minutes. Nora, Drury's voice gone careful and tight. Eastern Bandit is climbing out. He's giving up the chase in the rocks. He's going to come at you from above the clutter. Clean sky behind you. That's the shot I see him. She does. The radar return tells her where he's going, and she knows what he's about to do before he commits to it, because it's exactly what she would do in his seat. Climb out, get clean, cold sky behind the target so the terrain stops lying to your missile, and take the shot from the high perch, so she does the one thing he is not expecting. She climbs, not into his airspace. That would be suicide, and he'd love it. Just enough. Just enough to change her radar cross-section, to present as something different than what he's tracking, to break the picture he's building. And then she cuts hard west and drops back down on the far side of the ridge in a maneuver that makes the airframe do something it technically should not be able to do, and very clearly does not care about doing. She hears the lock tone start to build in her ear. She breaks it before it finishes. 18 minutes and 43 seconds. Oaks, all personnel secure and mounted. We are moving to the secondary. She exhales long and slow, and then, over the guard frequency, the open military channel that every aircraft and every station for 100 miles can hear, a voice she does not know. Ghost 4-1, this is Falcon 3. I'm the Eastern contact. A pause waited. I received a relay package 12 minutes ago. Documentation. Source authenticated. Chain of custody intact. I read all of it. A longer pause. The sound of a man's life changing. I will not fire on an American aircraft. And I will not fire on a man who flew 2 runs into a valley nobody else would touch. The airspace goes silent. Drury carefully into the quiet. Falcon 3, confirm your last. Confirmed. I am standing down and breaking station. A beat. Tell your people to go finish what they came to finish. I'll keep the Southern Bandit Company. CIA liaison transmitted the package the instant Oaks cleared the wire. Exactly as her father planned it, 8 months and 15 months in advance. The trap opening from the inside, finding at last a pair of hands clean enough to fall into. But it isn't finished. Because Tillis, somewhere far from here, watching the whole carefully built thing come apart on a screen, does the one thing that ends him for good. He flags the 706. Declares it a compromised aircraft, rogue element, unauthorized flight, hostile operator possibly aboard, and tries to route base air defense to engage it. He can't order Falcon 3 to fire anymore. That pilot already said no out loud, on a recorded channel in front of God and the whole net. He can't wait for the 0600 strike. Vorth is sitting on the demolition frequency with both hands. So he reaches for the last lever left to him and tries to make his own dead pilot's rescuer vanish on somebody else's authority. And he does it through the standard comms node, which records everything. Because that is precisely exactly how systems work. He just tried to use air defense on you, Vorth says in her ear from Bagram, and there is something almost reverent in her exhaustion. Through the main node. Timestamped. Logged. Nora. He just signed it. He just put his own authorization code on a sentence I can read out loud to a 3-star general. Dast is on the line with Joint Chiefs right now, reading it to them, slowly, with his full name and service number on the record. He has been waiting 14 months to make this exact phone call, and he is savoring it. Nora can picture it perfectly. Owen Dast at his desk, coffee gone to ice beside his hand, his voice completely level. The way a man sounds when he has been building toward a single sentence for 14 months, and the sentence has at last arrived. But there are still 3 caches, and the clock is still running, the east cache first. She comes in low and fast from the north, and there's a vehicle at the compound wall that wasn't in any imagery Vorth pulled. Engine running, heat shimmer rising off the exhaust in the cold nose pointed outbound. Not a collection team. A destruction team. Tillis sent men too, not just bombs. She can't fire near the building. The documentation is 4 meters from that engine block, so she does the only thing the terrain and the airframe allow her to do. She flies directly over the vehicle at 180 knots, 200 feet off the deck, which is, for a jet aircraft, almost absurdly slow and almost unimaginably loud. The pressure wave alone, that bass-frequency physical presence of 2 turbofans passing low overhead in the dark, does something to human decision-making that no training ever fully prepares a man to override. The vehicle sits frozen for 3 full seconds, then it runs. The wrong away from the building, away from the cache. Away, Falcon 3, she calls. East Cache ground team is running northeast on foot and wheels. Contain them, don't engage, can you? Already moving, he says. She hears him bank toward it. I'll sit on their 6 until they run out of road and good ideas. The South Cache has a remote demolition charge already in place. Tillis prepped that 1 day ago, patient and careful, the way he does everything. There is nothing she can do from the air to stop a radio signal traveling at the speed of light. So Vorth does it from a terminal at Bagram, flagging the demolition frequency as a training exercise overlap and bouncing every transmission from Tillis's authorization node into a verification queue that will take 1 hour and 5 minutes to clear, which leaves the truck, and a truck moves. When she reaches the compound where Roy's relay last logged it, the compound is empty. A truck-shaped absence in the frost. A gate standing open, swinging slightly in the wind. Oaks, his voice comes back thin, road noise behind it. 7 clicks east, inbound. What do you need? The vehicle cache is mobile and gone. White Land Cruiser. Missing passenger side mirror, dent above the driver's side rear wheel arch. Departed south through an open gate within the last few minutes. South-facing gate, this hour, this close to the border. She can hear him thinking, hear the map unrolling behind his eyes. There's exactly 1 maintenance track that makes sense. Runs the river tributary, hits a junction. We push hard. We're at that junction in 11 minutes. 5:47 plus 11 is 5:58, 2 minutes of margin against 0600, push, already am. And Nora, if this truck is what your father says it is, I'm about to block a road with a government vehicle inside another sovereign country with no authorization whatsoever. Which is going to make my after-action report the most creative writing this army has seen in 20 years. I'll write you a character reference. You're 18, I'm a very mature 18, something that might, in a man like Oaks, pass for a laugh, short, restrained, gone in an instant. Junction in 4, he says. And then at 5:45, the truck breaks into the open at the southern end of the junction track, and there is no one on the ground yet to stop it, only Nora. In the air above it. And under that rear seat sits the difference between a general in a cell and a general at a desk, between 15 months meaning everything, and 15 months meaning nothing at all. She can't hit it cleanly. Every instinct that isn't her father's training is screaming that she can't. The truck is moving 45 miles an hour through a gap in the terrain barely 4 meters wide between 2 converging ridge faces at an oblique angle of 23 degrees off her line, partly screened by a stand of dark scrub, with the wind doing 3 entirely different things at 3 different altitudes between her gun and the ground. Nora, Drury says, somewhere above and behind. I do not have the angle from here. It's all yours. You've got 8 seconds before it's into the trees and gone. She breathes. She steadies the aircraft, the whole airframe going quiet and obedient under her hands. She reads the wind off the snow streaming sideways from the ridge crest. She reads the truck's true speed off the dust rooster tailing behind it. She reads the 4-meter gap and the angle and the drop, and all of it resolves, the way it used to resolve on a desert range, with her father's voice counting her breathing, control the breath. Squeeze between heartbeats. Let the gun do exactly one thing. She fires a single, disciplined burst from the GAU-8 Avenger. That sound, that specific tearing thunder her father once called the sound of salvation, and the rounds thread the 4-meter gap and find the engine block and find nothing else. The truck stops. It doesn't burn. It doesn't roll. It doesn't cook off into a fireball that takes the documentation with it. The engine is simply, instantly, comprehensively no longer an engine. The vehicle slews to a dead halt in the dust, and the sealed container under the rear seat sits there, the sudden ringing silence completely intact. Drury is quiet on the radio for 3 full seconds, then, I'm not going to tell anyone I saw that, because nobody would believe me, and because I genuinely don't want to have to explain how I know what it means. 5:58. Oaks reaches the junction. We have the vehicle. Driver's out and on the ground. Container confirmed and secured. We have it. We have all of it. 600 hours, Tillis's strike window. And there is nothing left, anywhere in this valley, for it to strike. She banks west, she goes home. 6:14 in the morning. Full light, she did not plan for the light. It was supposed to be dark for this part, or at least the bruised gray of early morning, the kind of light that lets things happen quietly and lets people disappear back into the ordinary. Instead, the Afghan sun is doing the thing it does at altitude, pouring in sideways in gold across the whole valley, gilding the mountains, making everything look more significant than anything has a right to look. The 706 comes in on runway 24. This landing is better than the one in the valley. Smooth controlled. The gear kisses the asphalt and she rolls out long and brings the aircraft to a stop in the taxi area. She sits there for 3 seconds with the engines winding down behind her and the morning light coming through the canopy and the instruments going dark one by one, each green glow blinking out, the airplane going back to sleep. Done, she pops the canopy. The cold air hits her. Diesel, jet exhaust, that clean chemical bite of high-altitude morning, and she pulls off her helmet and sits there one more second, just one, being the person who just did all of that, before she has to climb down and go back to being whoever she's allowed to be on the ground. Then she climbs down, and her father is standing 40 feet away on the Bagram tarmac. He got here before her. Of course he did. Oakes's Element had a ground vehicle and a head start, and a far more direct route than the one she flew, the one that went the long way around through 2 F-16s and 3 caches, and an impossible shot. Of course he's already here. Colonel Dass stands beside him, hands behind his back, the morning sun catching the gray at his temples. Pruitt is over by the tow vehicle, arms crossed, his face doing absolutely nothing, which on Harlan Pruitt means everything there is. Vorth is off to one side, still talking fast into a headset, running 4 things at once, because she will be running 4 things at once until the day she dies. Her father watches her come. He doesn't move. He doesn't call out, stands with his hands at his sides, and watches her cross the tarmac the way he has always watched her, like the mission is walking toward him and it has her face. And she walks until she's close enough to see that he does, actually, look a little different than memory let him, older. More deliberate in the way he holds himself, carrying the particular stillness of 15 months spent being very, very careful about what he allowed himself to feel. She stops in front of him. "You're late," he says. "A beat, you moved the truck," she says. "It was a better staging location. You could have put that in the relay. I didn't anticipate you'd be running a simultaneous 3-cache interdiction while evading air defense. That part wasn't in my plan. Your plan had a gap. Plan was improvised in 4 hours. Your plan took 15 months, a pause, the sun on both their faces. Fair," he says. She's close enough now to see that his hands at his sides are not quite still. Not trembling. Roy Vane does not tremble. Just present, sliss. Like they want to be doing something and haven't yet been told what. "Your wind drift on the 3rd ridge," he says. "I watched it on Oakes's field monitor. You were 3 degrees low on the correction. I bridged it with rudder. I saw she holds very still. Dad," she says. "Yeah, are you okay?" He looks at her a long, long moment, and then he steps forward and he puts his arms around her. He is bigger than she remembered, or she is smaller than she thinks she is. 15 months is simply longer inside a person's body than it ever is on a calendar. His hand comes up to the back of her head the exact way it did when she was 8 years old, and the world had done something to her that she didn't yet have the size to carry. She doesn't cry. Neither does he. They just stand there on the Bagram tarmac in the gold morning light and hold on to each other. 1 breath. 2. Then he steps back, and he is Roy Vane again. Operational specific, the brief reasserting itself over the man. "The compilation went through," he says. "Vorth confirms relay received and authenticated. All of it, the frequency block held, until 0640 minimum. It was enough. It was more than enough," he nods. "Once, good," he says quietly. "Good. Thing about General Warren Tillis is that he was by every official measure a very capable man. 26 years of service, multiple theater commands, a commendation list that runs 2 full pages. He sank himself," Vorth explains it later, "in the intelligence room, the flat satisfaction of a woman 26 hours awake who has earned the right to use a word like inevitable. He'd been doing it for years," she says, "and it had been working for years, which is the entire problem with being successfully corrupt over a long enough time. You start to believe the system can't catch you, because it never has. You stop being careful. You start to think the rules are decorations." She pulls up the logs. "And then, 5:31 in the morning, you try to use base air defense to erase an inconvenient witness, and you route it through the standard node like it's a fuel requisition, And the only thing standing between you and walking away clean is one 27-year-old intelligence officer who happened to still be awake. She doesn't say it with pride. She says it the way you say a thing that is simply true. Is he going to prison? Nora asks. The investigation is formal as of 0720. The evidence chain is authenticated and intact. The unauthorized hold from 01, the weapons pipeline records, the transmission logs from this morning where he tried to have his own pilot shot out of the sky. A pause. Competent prosecutor is not going to have to work very hard with this, but these things take time. Always longer than they should. She looks at her tablet, then at Nora, and her exhausted face goes, for a moment, completely serious. Here's what your father understood that most people never do. You don't just catch someone. Anyone can catch someone, get lucky, get a confession, get a moment. What your father did is harder. He made it so there's no version of reality where Tillis walks away. No technicality, no gap, no lucky break for the defense. That's why he spent 15 months on it instead of trying to escape in 3. He wasn't building a case. He was building a wall. Nora thinks about the concrete room, the laptop, the 2 little blinking drives. A man who had every reason on earth to spend 15 months being broken, and who spent them instead building a wall that a general cannot climb. He built a door that only opens from the outside, she says, and you opened it. A pause. We opened it, Nora says. Forth looks at her for a moment. Then she picks up her tablet and stands. I'm filing 12 reports today. Some of them are going to be genuinely creative pieces of literature. So do me a favor and don't tell me anything else that happened tonight. I need clean, plausible deniability on at least 4 of them. She heads for the door. Stops. Doesn't turn around. For what it's worth, your father wrote about you in those relay files. Constantly. In the margins of operational notes about a weapons pipeline, he kept writing about his daughter. Like you were the only fixed point on his entire map. She goes, thought you should know that. From me. Since he'll never say it that way, Nora watches her go and thinks, that woman is the single most dangerous person on this entire base, and almost nobody knows it yet. Her father finds her in Bay 4 at 1100 hours, after she's slept 90 minutes on a cot with a blanket that Pruitt laid over her without waking her, and that he will flatly deny placing if anyone is ever foolish enough to ask him. Roy Vane knocks on the frame of the open bay. She has never once done in her living memory. The man opens doors like he holds the deed to the room behind them. The knock is the careful action of a man who has thought for a while about this specific approach. Come in, she says. He comes in. He looks at the 706 sitting in the center of the bay, hers now, scarred from a hard landing and a long night. She looks at him looking at it. There is a very long silence between them that is not uncomfortable in any way. The silence of 2 people who have never once filled space with noise unless the noise was worth something. You could have told me, she says finally, at any point in 15 months. You had a working relay by October. If I'd told you, you'd have come immediately. Yes, and the case wasn't ready. Tillis would have had enough to muddy the water. You'd have flown across a border to rescue a man and walked straight into nothing. He looks at her, and his voice doesn't change, but something underneath it does. I needed it airtight before you moved, which meant I needed you not to know it existed until it was. So you timed my arrival. I timed the key. She thinks about Pruitt. About 11 days. I've been waiting for you to figure out what you came here for. You told him when to give me the key, she says. I told him to give it to you when you were ready. Not before, and how did Harlan Pruitt know when an 18-year-old he'd known for 9 days was ready? Roy looks at the airplane. When you stopped reading the wiring diagram, he says, and started doing the checks from memory, he sent me one line through the relay. Said, she doesn't need the diagram anymore. A pause. That was your 3rd day. Told him to give you a week. Let you settle. Let you learn the shape of the place before I handed you the thing that would blow it apart. She sits with the architecture of it. The sheer, patient cruelty and tenderness of it, indistinguishable from each other. 15 months of patience, and folded up inside it, a smaller clock, her clock. Ticking quietly from the moment she set foot on this base. That's the most complicated thing anyone has ever done for me, she says. You're welcome, he says, completely, perfectly without irony. And she laughs. A real one, this time, short and involuntary and slightly undignified, the kind of laugh that comes out of a person when a thing is both completely outrageous and precisely right, and there is simply no other available response in the entire human repertoire. Roy doesn't laugh. He never has, not really, but the corners of his eyes do something, and she has spent 18 years learning to read exactly that. Formal thing happens at 1400 hours. Nobody warns her. Vorth just says come to the briefing room, and Nora's learned over a very long day to do what Vorth says. And when she walks in, the unit is standing in formation, which is deeply unusual for 1400 on a Thursday. Drury is in the front rank. He does not look at her when she enters, which, she understands now, means he knows exactly what's coming, and he has decided that looking at her in this moment would do something to his face that he does not want done in front of the squadron. Dast is at the front with a single piece of paper. Acting under Article 63 authority, pending formal review, he says, and he does not read it fast. He gives every word its full and deliberate weight. I am issuing the following temporary assignment, effective immediately. Airman Nora Vane is assigned to command function for mixed element flight operations under the 74th Fighter Squadron. Pending determination of a formal commissioning pathway. The room is very still. She will be addressed during operational radio traffic by the appropriate command designation. He looks up from the paper. He looks directly at her, the second time this week, and the first time without something tired and defeated behind his eyes. Do you understand this assignment, Airman Vane? She swallows. Yes, sir. Good. You'll receive your formal briefing from Captain Drury at 1600. He folds the paper. Slow. Dismissed. The room comes apart into motion, people filing past her toward the door. And then Drury is in front of her. She didn't hear him approach, which tells her something about how depleted she actually is. At 1600, he says, you and I are going to sit down, and I'm going to explain to you precisely what this assignment means, what it does not mean, and what I expect from the people I put my aircraft and my life next to in the sky. A pause. Before that, you're going to eat something, and you're going to sleep more than 90 minutes, because you're about to be responsible for other human beings, and you cannot do that running on adrenaline and institutional coffee. The coffee was terrible. It's always terrible. That's a constant. Build your whole worldview around it. He starts to turn away. Stops. Doesn't look back at her. For the record, 13 years of flying. I have never, not once, seen anybody do what you did in that valley last night. A beat. Roy Vane was the best pilot in this unit before I ever got here. Everybody said so. It was just a fact. Like the weather, he walks toward the door. They were all understating it. And then, through the open door, from the operations room down the hall, the radio. Routine traffic, nothing urgent. A pilot establishing a channel for an afternoon sortie. Bagram Flight Ops. This is Falcon 3 requesting a frequency check. The same pilot. The one who broke formation in the dark over Pakistan and decided he would not fire on an American aircraft. And without a pause, without a discussion, without anyone needing to vote on it. The way these things happen once the people who needed to decide them have already quietly decided. Copy Falcon 3. Reading you 5 by 5, a beat. Commander on deck at 1600. Commander, not Airman Vane. Not the crew chief trainee. Not the 18-year-old who showed up 11 days ago and sat in the second row and wrote mission parameters in his notebook, while a captain asked the room who authorized her existence, Commander. In the doorway, Drury stops. Just for a second. He doesn't turn around. But she sees his shoulders change. The smallest possible shift, the kind of thing you'd never catch unless you'd spent 11 days learning to read a man who has trained his whole life to show nothing at all. Then he keeps walking. She understands that this single second of stillness from Mace Drury, who has never given her anything easily, is the loudest thing he will ever say to her. She goes out to the aircraft 15:30. 30 minutes early. She doesn't tell anyone she's going. She doesn't need to bay 4. The morning light has become afternoon light now, slanting in from the west at a low gold angle, and the 7.6 sits in the center of it the way it always sits. Patient, specific, honestly and unapologetically ugly, in the way of a thing that was built to work instead of to be looked at. The way of a thing that brings you home. She walks to it. Her hand finds the fuselage, the same place. The same gesture as 11 hours and a whole lifetime ago, in the cold and the dark, before she knew anything. The flat-palmed contact of a person greeting a thing she trusts without a single reservation in the world. She thinks about Nevada, about a 16-year-old and a Sunday morning, and a man who had already decided, long before she had any idea, exactly what kind of person his daughter was going to be allowed to become. She thinks about 15 months, about a small key carried in a chest pocket warm against a man's heart all that time, about a flight log that said, small precise handwriting that didn't waste space. She knows you, she does, she breathes in. Diesel, hydraulic fluid, cold metal, and the particular specific smell of an aircraft that has been somewhere terrible and come all the way back. She breathes out. Ugly plane, she says. Quietly, just the bay, just the machine. Just the gold afternoon light coming in low from the west. Slow plane, a breath, but you always bring us home, not his words, not anymore, hers.